لو تغينا مزيس كنو فلنا نفريه بلنا كنتبع لنا سبسي أي تفرحي نحق فرح نزقيها فرحي
Thank you for joining on Teddy Press program. We have a special guest today, Åsa Nilsson Söderström from Stockholm, Sweden, to discuss on the illegal activities of the Eritrean regime. Åsa Nilsson Söderström serves on the International Board of Liberal Party and the group leader ሊበራል in District Council of Spånga, Tenesta, Stockholm. Åsa is managing the Lifeline Fund for Embattled Civil Societies Organizations at the Swedish International Liberal Center. Åsa educational background is bachelor's in political science, and she has a long experience of working within the liberal family in Sweden and internationally. She has also served as deputy head of parliamentary office of the Liberal Party of Sweden, as a political advisor to the Ministry of Gender Equality. She has been actively involved in the advocacy for justice and democracy in Eritrea, especially to stop the illegal activities and human rights abuses of the Eritrean regime, including on the case of Swedish Eritrean journalist and playwright David Isaac. Åsa writes articles in Swedish newspapers and on social media as well. It's a great to have you, Åsa. Welcome.
Tack. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. Hur är det vackra, det snälla svenska folket och det vackra Sverige?
Oh, you speak perfect Swedish. Sweden is it's a beautiful time in Sweden. May is the best month, I think.
I know. So I can imagine that there is a beautiful flowers coming out and so on and so on. Yeah, very beautiful.
It is indeed. Yeah, it's a beautiful spring day, and I spent all the day outside because we have a holiday today, so it was a relaxing day.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. So we will go to the one of you posted on your Facebook page about some hours, I think 5-6 hours before on, let me find out. I think I'll go to your page. We will start by it. And then this is the one he posted a while ago. And then he mentioned about, he thank you about to Christina and all Eritrean advocacy activists acting against the regime's celebration in Stockholm in Skellefteå.
Actually, what we're seeing in Sweden now is that before in connection to the Independence Day, we have the Eritrean regime organizing a lot of activities. I think in between 15 and 20 cities, they are planning different celebrations, and we are doing our best to stop them. But Sweden is an open and democratic country, so it's not always so easy, but we do our best. Especially,
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is a case in Skellefteå in northern Sweden, where it seems like they will be able to stop it. I hope so, at least. And
which cities are the Eritrean regime is actively involved or working? Are these?
It's actually all over the country, from the north to the south, small towns, bigger towns, everywhere. It seems like. And we do have a big Eritrean diaspora in Sweden. I think for the last few years, it's been the third biggest nationality among the people who come to Sweden. So we have people who live there for a long time, of course. So there's very many Eritreans living in Sweden, and we see that the conflict between the groups are escalating all the time.
Do we know how many the Eritrean descendants are there?
We don't register people on ethnicity, so it's hard to get an exact number. I guess if you ask the Eritrean embassy, they would have a better estimate, but they tend to keep track of people. But I would say between 50 and 100,000, 50,000 to 100,000 Swedes with Eritrean heritage or Eritrean background.
I see. Okay, great. On your post again, coming back to, I know you are very involved and active in social media. I can see on the May 8th, you mentioned like it reads like that. I can see on your Facebook now, Stockholm has become a hub for Eritrean regime's activities in Europe. Here live the families of many high generals, and here many collections are arranged through associations, churches, and festivals. The embassy is highly involved. So my question to you is, why is the Eritrean regime is using Stockholm and Sweden in general as a hub, do you think?
I think, this is something happening all over the world, as I understand it. The Eritrean regime likes to keep track of the people. They like to get their money, of course. A big part of the Eritrean budget, as I understand it, come from money from abroad. Some of it is given voluntarily, but some of it is actually given forcefully or given after threats. So this is something we need to fight against. And we've seen this year an increased activity in Sweden, and I think it's due to the fact that in Holland, Germany, Norway, they have been better at tackling the issue. Like in Holland, I believe they have closed the embassy, they have closed the festivals. They are a lot more aware than we are. Already several years ago, the Dutch Minister of Foreign Affairs, they demanded reports, they did some research on what is really happening. And in Sweden, we've been kind of naive. We have to see that this is not only an Eritrean problem. We have the same issue with Iranian activists being followed by their embassy. We have the same with China, who has a house here where they control people, and Russians. So this is a way that dictatorships deal with, and we have to stop it. There was a report released in March this year in Sweden. So I think in general, people are starting to open their eyes. And I've been talking about this issue for a long time, and I feel that there's I get more connection. I get more people who are interested and wants to join me in the fight. So that's what we've been doing lately. We try to, because since Sweden is a segregated country, all the Eritreans have been aware about the problem, but like the general Swedish public has not been so interested. And now we need to raise this issue so people hear about it and understand it. And it's not enough that only Eritreans talk about this problem, because this is a problem for all of Sweden. If there's a foreign country here controlling some of our people, treating them badly, and in general, like collecting money here to go to it. I mean, we shouldn't have Swedish taxpayers' money going to a dictatorship. We cannot be we are basically the ones who finance the. Sorry, my English is not so good. We finance the prison of David Isaac. And we finance it by giving like public funds to the church here, which is very dominated by the regime. And that's very sad.
Yeah, I see you, Jonas Tukhlia. You would like to ask, please call me if you call us if you want, 832-455-0540 here on the screen. You can find it here, Jonas, and others. You can also text us. I see. I can read your text messages here. Janet, for example, stating Sweden is doing an exemplary job standing against fascism and genocidal regime of Eritrea. Isaias Afwerki and his supporters. And she say every country worldwide should follow the role of model of Sweden, she say. Thank you, Janet, for your input. Really appreciate for your comments, our viewers and our Teddy Press family here. And then I would like to mention also that you in Sweden call the borderless harassment of the Eritrean regime on the Swedish people who have Eritrean descent. So what are the Eritrean government is doing right now to harass the Eritrean origin people in Sweden right now?
I think it's going on all the time. And especially if somebody speaks up, we have had cases where people have been hit and they have been threatened, and then of course we have the 2% tax that you're supposed to pay 2% of what you have earned since you fled Eritrea, and if you don't, your family back home will maybe be hurt, or you will have what you own, your property is taken away from you, or you cannot go back, or your mom cannot be buried. This is not okay. These are people who live in Sweden. They work here and they are taxed in Sweden. They should not be taxed in Eritrea.
Yeah, I see you. You are one of the very critic to the Eritrean regime in Sweden. Why do you hate so much? Why do you oppose the Eritrean government? Just to ask you as an open question for you.
No, I hate dictatorships. I think and Eritrea is such a typical example of a dictatorship, and one of the worst. I mean, they don't even pretend. They don't have a parliament. They don't have a constitution. The president is making all the decisions, and seems like not even caring about his people fleeing the country, starving, and definitely not caring about the neighboring people either, with the wars is waging. And that he can do because it's a dictatorship. So I've always tried to work for democracy. I'm proud to be a politician in Sweden, which is a democratic country, and I think everybody should have that possibility to take part in the ruling of the country. It's a human right.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I know. I've been in Sweden, so I love very much Swedish people and the country. It's the freedom that you have. It's one of the the world's best country in the world. So I wish you will have such kind of democracy in Eritrea one day. Hope that the next generation will have something better life in terms of democracy and life standard. You mentioned about the article was written by Susan a little bit earlier. I was reading, and then you posted it on your Facebook as well. So I have a kind of question. We'll talk about Dawit Isaak in regards, since it talks about it. As people know, the Dawit Isaak is the Swedish Eritrean journalist who is in prison in Eritrea since 2001 for more than 20 years now. On the article of Susan Berger, it says in a 2015 written ruling, the Swedish Prosecutor General's office readily acknowledged that the crimes committed against Mr. Dawit Isaak rise to the level of crime against humanity. But as you know, the Swedish officials continue to cling a strategy of silent diplomacy, even though the approach has yielded no tangible results. Okay, so my question to you, based on the statement on the article, is why do you think the Swedish government refused to use all his powers and influences to release Dawit Isaak?
Yeah, well, actually, I don't understand it. They should do so much more. It's a shame. It's really a shame that we have a Swedish citizen who has been imprisoned. I think he's the longest serving political prisoner in the world. And of course, there has been things done that maybe not all of us see. But right now, I think the only chance to get him out is to make sure that we don't have a dictatorship, that we get rid of Isaias Afewerki, because he seems not to be willing to change at all. And this is not a question only of Dawit Isaak, of course. There's so many prisoners in Eritrea. And for them to be freed, there needs to be a change of government. There needs to be a change of regime.
Yeah, it's very, very good point that he made. Janet says again, I guess here, absolutely correct, Ms. Söderström. Taxpayers' money in Sweden should never go to support the Eritrean regime. Isaias Afwerki committing a genocide in Tigray. Absolutely, fascism must be defeated, she say. And then she also say, just complementing what you have said, it has to be a regime change in Eritrea. So she said here again, Sweden and the ICC, I think the International Court, must support the opposition of the Eritrean, the Isaias Afwerki Eritreans in diaspora working for regime change in Eritrea. Time Isaias Afwerki must go to ICC, she said. Thank you so much, Danet, again. Really appreciate you for your comments. And there was another comment here. Eritreans will live in Denmark have such a huge problem too, and we need help from people like you, Åsa. Please ask her if she have some work friends in Denmark, and if she can contact and tell about Eritreans. She said, Israel said.
Yeah. Of course, I think, in my experience, liberal politicians, to us, democracy is it's part of the DNA. Liberal democracy with the respect for minorities and equal rights for everybody. So reach out to your liberal party is my suggestion. I can of course help and put you in contact with somebody, but I think it's actually the most important that we unite around this, because what I've seen over the years is that the Eritrean diaspora has been very split in different groups and sometimes have a hard time to work together. And this is, of course, it's natural in a dictatorship, because the dictator will always try to split you. And we've seen this in Russia, we've seen this in Egypt, in all dictatorships. You see that the regime is trying to split the opposition, because that's how they survive. But we really need to unite the opposition. And I think it's important that civil society and democratic politicians work together, because this is a very important issue that we need to stand united on. And if we stand united, we can achieve more. This is what we've seen in Sweden the last few weeks now, that the different Eritrean organizations, they are working together. They are sending letters together to different politicians. And that's a big change from before.
Thank you so much. Coming back to the Dawit Isaak case, on the Susan's article, it mentions Dawit Isaak has remained essentially an outsider, an African immigrant, a black man living in a predominantly white society, a Swedish citizen, but not a native Swede. It says on that. Yeah. That's what he says on the article. So my question, it makes me to wonder, is it because he's an African, because he's not a native Sweden, that he is still in prison, or the Swedish government has not done for more than 20 years? Do you think that?
Especially in the beginning, like 2001, 2002, then I think it was really this case. Nobody knew who David Isaak was. Nowadays, he is well seen, well recognized. Everybody knows who David Isaak. All the Swedish journalists is fighting for his case. So now it's really, he's not unknown, and he's seen as a Swede. But yeah, I'm not sure. We see the same. We have another Swedish citizen, Gui Minhai, imprisoned in China. Also there, nothing has happened for a long time. If it's, I'm not involved enough in the government to know whether it's because we have tried too little, or whether it's because dictatorships tend to ignore other nationalities than their own. So of course the Eritrean government doesn't recognize David Isaak as a Swede, and the Chinese government doesn't recognize Gui Minhai as a Swede, even though they are. So I'm not sure where the fault is, but we can see that like blonde and white people who have been imprisoned have usually come out of prison. But where the fault is, I don't know.
Okay. So if you were, for example, a Swedish foreign minister, what different would you do to release, for example, David Isaak from the prison, do you think?
I think we need to be very straightforward, saying that this is a dictatorship. The way the regime is treating its own people is, I don't know, you could even almost call it genocide, because, I mean, people are fleeing, people are starving, people are sent to, kids are sent to war. It's, I mean, if we meant something by the responsibility to protect that the UN doesn't talk so much about anymore, this is the country where we actually would have the responsibility to protect the people against its own government.
So what would you do?
Very hard. I mean, first of all, I mean, I'm a believer in what do you call it? Sanctions. Sanctions is in English.
Sanctions. Okay, you don't believe on that.
You need sanctions, and it's, of course, it would be absolutely clear that people from the Eritrean government shouldn't be able to come to Sweden to celebrate the Independence Day or to celebrate some other festival or something. That's for sure. You need to put sanctions on all the important people in the government. I think.
Okay. You would sanction the Eritrean regime, you say?
Yes, definitely.
What would you do for?
I'm not sure how much. And then I think we also have a problem. In general, I'm a person who really welcome asylum seekers. I think it's important to have an open society. But if you come to Sweden asking for asylum from Eritrea because you were mistreated there, you cannot the next day go and celebrate the same regime. Then you were lying when you gave your reasons for asylum, and you should go back. So this is something we need to deal with a lot more. I think there are some changes being made in the current government on this issue, and that's good.
Yeah,
because
see.
There's many people who need asylum in Sweden, and we should be open for these people. But for the people who come here to celebrate the dictatorship, they shouldn't go back.
So is there anything that the government is planning to do about it? For example, in people who, as you said, received asylum status in Sweden, but at the same time contributing money to that government. I mean, all kinds of support. They are giving political support, economical support. They are also spies to the government sometimes. Attack as the Swedish citizens in Europe, in Sweden, and other countries too. So, do you know anything what the Swedish government is planning to do? Or?
Yeah, there is a lot of changes in the migration policy, and I think that could be beneficial. But we need to make all the time when you make policies, it's so important to follow up that they're actually implemented. So that's something we need to work on. We also need to work on the police and the secret police in Sweden, that they actually take a broader view on all the reports we have of people spying or people mistreating democracy activists. This is important. And I think if you asked before what would I do if I was the foreign minister, I would really like to close the Eritrean embassy. I think a lot of things are being coordinated from there, and if we can close it, that would make things easier.
Yeah, on the Eritrean part, you can see that as you and other people are doing a lot of activities. This is, for example, a newspaper from Dagens Kalmar. In Kalmar, the day before yesterday was written here, and group from Eritrea demonstrerar mot landsmän. It says the gentlemen here and other people are organizing demonstration against those Eritreans who are supporting the Eritrean regime. So which is very, very, very good that they are very actively trying their best to distract the regime activities in Sweden.
But I have a bit of a... What happens sometimes here is that people go out and demonstrate, and then there's violence. I think that's not a good solution. What happened in Husby last September, for example, there was a Eritrean party organized. We were not able to stop it. I think that the local community in Stockholm, they should have stopped it, because we have democracy criteria for renting out premises, and this was a public premise. So we should have closed it, but they didn't. It was the Social Democrats and the Left Party who are now in majority. So I don't know why, but they didn't close it. And then the democracy activists come there and protests, and there was violence. And in the end, it's the good people who get dragged away by the police, because this was a private party that was not stopped. So if it's possible, I think it's better to work in a political way to use the rules we have. For example, democracy criteria for renting out premises, to close the event before it happens. That's my preferred way. And then we have a very far-reaching freedom of speech in Sweden. For example, we had a Danish activist burning the Quran here. Awful thing to do, absolutely awful, but it's legal in Sweden. It's legal. We have the right to say even things we hate. We have to accept them. So at the same time, I mean, if people want to join in a room and say, we love Eritrea, we love Afewerki, I cannot stop it. But of course, what we can make sure is that these organizations should not have one single cent or penny of taxpayers' money, and they should not be allowed to use public premises.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope the authorities and police listens your advice, so at least they can protect before it happens. If it's closed, it wouldn't happen such thing, you know. If they stop the illegal activities in Sweden, I mean, people even cooperate for other constructive things, you know. You mentioned last year, even, for example, that we could have a festival, you know, for big festival for democracy. I think it didn't happen, but I know that you mentioned last year when it was a lot of, you know, I remember you wrote an article then. You wish to have, you mentioned that you're going to have that festival for democracy for next year, for this year.
Yeah, we have to organize something instead, because when there's somebody in a democracy, when there's somebody standing in a corner and screaming something you don't like, the best way is probably to ignore it and go do something else, do something positive instead.
Yeah, and then there was here from Marcel Seb is writing here. Hello, Teddy and Åsa. Teddy, please let Åsa read this, okay? Åsa, tack så för att du kom hit och vill höra om våra problem. Som politiker och beslutsfattare, hur mycket vet du om eritreanska kyrkan och andra föreningar?
I think I know, since I have worked on this issue quite a lot, and I have many Eritrean friends, I'm getting a more and more deeper picture of how infiltrated or dominated by the regime, the Eritrean churches. I've heard so many stories of people who are kicked out of the church, not welcome because they don't pay the 2% tax or because they don't swear loyalty to the regime. And this is a big problem, because we also have a lot of funds available for churches in Sweden, and these funds are now going to the Eritrean regime. And we had several cases also where money is going to different cultural organizations that are also dominated by the regime. And this has to be stopped. And it's a tough work. In Sweden, we have like 200 municipalities, and a lot of money is on the municipal level. So this is a big education we need to do for the local politicians. And I think, well, reach out to your local politicians. That's a good way to start. We are now doing it step by step in the cities where there's now festivals, and we'll continue that work.
I think it's very important advice that you are giving us. I think that's one thing that we fail to work with our local politicians. I think all Eritreans everywhere should reach out their, representatives and other stuff. There was another comment here also from Janet again. Independent international journalists and media must enter into Eritrea, exposing the hundreds of prisons in Eritrea, where thousands of prisoners are tortured and murdered with brutally every time. And then it keeps saying again, how deep Åsa knows about the Swedish investigation about the Eritreans that we heard journalists Mahari Abraha and journalist Khalid Abdu had talked about in last months. They're, that Mahari Abraham and Khalid Abdu, they are my old friends, by the way, in Sweden. They are journalists. They are talking in the local media about how about the Eritrean plight in Eritrea. So I don't know. The question is if you know about it or something like that.
The Swedish investigations could be. There was a report published in March by FOE. It's a defense agency. And it's looking into the situation of Eritrean activities in Sweden, also Iranian, Russian, Chinese activities. And it's a very good document. They didn't do a lot of research themselves, but they put together all the research that exists. So I think this document has been very helpful to stop activities here. Because when you talk to bureaucrats or to people in the politicians or people who are employed by the local authorities, you need to show some kind of substantive proof what has happened. And this document, this report is very good for that reason. Even though there needs to be more done, of course, but it's good. It's a good start.
Great. I don't know how much the Swedish government can have an influence for, but Janet was saying Sawa must be closed where it is a training area for focus to commit crimes, act against humanity. No more Sawa. Yeah, I mean, you know that the Eritrean government, when they train the military training, they don't only train you militarily. They also train you how to hate your neighbors, for example. That's what they committed the crime in Tigray, for example, last time. So they train you politically that you can be against the Western society, against the whatever government that he thinks that they are against him. So it is very important. This is another suggestion which came from one of our listeners. And Dr. Tedros is from Sweden also. He says those who get asylum in Sweden because of repression in Eritrea, and when they get asylum, they swear their allegiance to the dictator should be sent to the where they come from. Yeah, this is exactly what you have been saying.
Yes. And also regarding the Sawa, I understand that the Eritrean government has big activities in Sweden where they go to young people who were even born in Sweden, and they organize camps where they can come to Sawa for a week of holiday and to get to know their roots. And this is so much against integration. We need to, these people need to not look back to Eritrea. They need to get involved in Swedish civil society, Swedish political parties. This is where they live. This is where we should build Sweden together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you can have also a positive impact in Eritrea in that way. So you have the power, you have the influence, you have also friends from the Swedish society, and then at that time, so you can mobilize more people to help you.
Yeah. For example, looking now, we have Somali people are the biggest minority in Sweden, and they are now making a lot of positive things back in northern Somalia, where there's more safety, like in Puntland. We have people from Sweden traveling there for the elections, getting involved in political parties there, and of course a lot of businessmen going back. So this is really the circular migration where we will gain so much from what you have learned in Sweden. You will take it back to your home country. And for Sweden's sake, we will also gain. We will have good trade bonds with Somalia and with Kurdistan. We have also, it's good.
Yeah, I think great. Thank you so much. Before a while ago, you mentioned about how to unite is very important, especially for the Eritrean activists and opposition groups in diaspora. What do you advise or suggest, for example, for the Swedish Eritrean citizens, just seekers in Sweden and beyond?
Well, what I advise everybody, not only Eritreans, is to get involved in a political party, because that's where you can actually make a lot of change. And we need more people in politics, because democracy is getting weak when we don't have enough people in the parties. So we need all kinds of different people in the parties. So please join and make your voice heard and change the world for better.
Thank you so much. So I think this is the question is not what I prepared for you to talk about just for this program. I hope I will see you some other time. And then if you have any last word to say, so I give you the chance.
No, welcome back to Sweden again. Would be great to be here. And keep on fighting. We need to close those festivals all over the place now, because just to show that we don't accept this anymore, and we need to get more people on our side.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hälsa to Sverige.
Yeah, I will. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. ዝኸበርኩም ተኸታተልቲ ምስ ኦሳ ሊንሰን ሶንደርስትሮም ዝነበረ ቃለ መሕተት ኣብዚ ወዲእ ኣለኹ ካልእ እዋን ብካልእ ትሕሶ ክሳዕ ንራኸብ ኣብዚ ዘለኹሞ ሰላም just say bye bye and I will see you next week.
ለውጥ ኸይና ምስስ ክንውፍ ኣለና ክንፈርህ የብልና ክንተባዕ ኣለና ሰብሲ ኣይትፍራሕ የብሉ ንሕጊ ፍራሕ ንዝገየ ፍራሕ